I don't know how many hundred people were there, but yeah, it was just, you sort of walk and you think, oh, where am I? This is surreal. And everyone's looking at you and you're trying, you don't really want to look at people, say hi or whatever. It's just tough this going through that. Very tough.
Did you ever think, is the killer in this church?
Yep.
Do you think he was?
Yep, because it would have made them look like, they cared.
I believe that the person who killed her was at her funeral. I realised that 100%.
You're listening to episode 4 of Dear Rachelle, a podcast by True Crime Australia. I'm Ashlea Hansen. This is the untold story of Rachelle Childs, a 23-year-old who was brutally murdered. Her killer has never been caught.
My memory of that day is really blurry. Everything around that time is really blurry. I can't remember much at all because it was just, it was traumatic. Well, her funeral was huge. In my head, there was 1,000 people there.
It was packed. There were people out of the doors, and it's a big church.
By memory, it was mostly young people, like people Rachelle's age. The crowd was big enough that there was standing room only.
They'd come to say goodbye to 23-year-old Rachelle Childs. Her funeral was held at Mary Mother of the Church in Macquarie Fields in Western Sydney. The priest, Father Michael Healy, had also presided over Rachelle's Holy Communion. It was a crisp winter's day and the sun was shining.
And they had to stop traffic to let the procession through.
I remember just being in a zone. I did the eulogy, getting up and speaking, and I knew I had to be brave, so I had to just put on a real armour.
We'd put together some music and stuff like that for the funeral service, and I remember writing a letter to her to go in with her.
A really surreal experience, almost like I was watching it, not experiencing it, because I was very good at not letting myself feel for a chapter there.
It screams volumes about the person she was and the circle of friends and what she meant to people. It was the biggest funeral I've ever attended, and even to this day I've ever attended.
I remember putting my suit on and I was so skinny and gross, and I just remember feeling like I was withering away, physically, mentally, my soul, everything.
Rachelle's dad, Graham, was known for his speeches at weddings and birthdays. Here's an actor voicing the hardest speech of Graham's life, his daughter's final goodbye.
Thank you, friends, for being here today. I can't begin to describe the sorrow in my heart. The last 2 weeks have seen us living out the family's greatest nightmare. The only thing that has sustained us is the love shown by you. Your thoughts, your words, your tears, your prayers have all helped us immensely. Over the past 2 weeks, Shell's friends and workmates have told us many wonderful stories. The time that Rachelle was late for work because she had to rescue a bull from Appin Road. The time that Shell stopped in traffic in Queen Street, the main street in Campbelltown, to rescue an injured Glar. And one very special story where a 65-year-old lady described how Shell was a great companion to her when she was going through some very difficult times. Shell was a very special person. In many ways, she was a son I never had. Her approach to life was full on. She never saw a challenge too big. She had an insatiable thirst for life and for making friends. After 5 minutes with Shell, you felt she was your best mate, and you knew the friendship would last forever. I know Shell would be sitting up there saying, "Come on, get over it." So to help us get over it, I would like to leave you with a vision of Shell. I would like you all to look up to the ceiling, to the beams of shining light through the windows. Now close your eyes. Picture Shell, that beautiful girl, that long blonde hair and those big blue eyes, that cheeky grin and that infectious laugh. See how beautiful she is? See the fun she's having and the chaos she's creating? Now freeze frame that memory, place it in your heart and take it wherever you go. My little angel will be looking after you. I love you, Bubs. Fly free.
In the weeks since Rachelle's murder, police had cast a wide net, but they were convinced she knew her killer. Detectives had boots on the ground at the funeral, anticipating her murderer might be there too.
I remember standing away from the burial site and I had a detective beside me asking, do you know who that person is? Do you know who that person is? Do you know who that person is? And I'm like, I've got no idea who all these people are.
I think Rachelle's killer was at the funeral.
What makes you so confident of that? Is it because you profile this killer as someone who knew Rachelle and also that Rachelle trusted, so therefore would have to keep a persona that they cared?
Well, that's right. And if you weren't there, that's a red flag. That's a big question mark for me. That's something that would stand out and what the investigators would be looking for. Finding out who's who in the zoo, and you're trying to seek a close companion of Rachelle's. You're also looking for the emotional side of things. Are we seeing big crocodile tears from somebody that really doesn't seem to care too much about her or didn't care much about her? Are we seeing some odd behaviour? Are we seeing someone who's really nervous being there? The cops wouldn't have stood out as being cops, so they would have filtered into that the people around Rachelle's funeral as unknowns. And you wouldn't be looking for a cop. They wouldn't be in uniform, I can guarantee you that. And this is what we do. You try and seek out the behaviours.
Does any one particular person stand out to you at the funeral?
Yeah. I remember staring at him at the court case and he wouldn't make eye contact with me. I remember staring at him at the funeral and he wouldn't look at me. I remember the distance he had from everybody else. At the funeral, he just made me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, very, very conscious of who was there.
At this stage, detectives had a growing list of persons of interest. It's believed at least 4 POIs were there that day. Police were looking very closely at all the men in Rachelle's life. Here's her best friend Lisa. Leading up to her death, what was Rachelle's love life like?
Yeah, a bit all over the place. Men loved her. She just had that personality, that warm, friendly, gorgeous soul, and she was into guy stuff, so that was just a winning recipe for all of them, She was attractive, bubbly, friendly, funny, but loved cars, and loved cricket and, all these things that they loved, so she would bond very quickly and easily. But never really, and this is one of the things I hate for her, is that I don't think she ever really got to experience deep and meaningful reciprocal love.
Do you think she was looking for love?
Yes, I do. Unbeknown to herself, again, with hindsight. Yes, I do. I think the girl that she was, and deep down, not the, what everyone would see, she wanted someone special for sure. She just didn't find her person, I guess, and in the meantime just had fun. Yeah, we talked about boys a lot, that was a big part of that really tight part of our friendship was where she was living at the time in Bargo and I was living with my parents about 45 minutes away. It was Monday nights, it was Sex and the City night. I'd put my PJs on, I'd get my warmest blanket because it was always so cold at her house, and I'd drive there and we'd cook dinner and we'd just talk about boys like non-stop, and fun stuff and, light and, and we'd cook dinner and then we'd watch Sex and the City and then I would stay over and drive back the next. It was just a thing, a thing that we had.
Fiona, you used to pop over for girls' night too?
Yeah, so there was me, Lisa and Rachelle. So I still have this fond memory. She made a salad. I don't know what we were having with the salad, but I always remember she crushed up Doritos, cheese Doritos, and put them on the salad. And it's just been something that has stuck with me for forever. Like I just remember, who puts Doritos on a salad?
Unique recipes aside, friendships were a big part of her life, and so was navigating dating and love in her early 20s.
She'd been in a long-term relationship that had gone to shit, by that stage. It had been, there was an unhealthy relationship, and how they lived and how much she carried all the finances and the bills and the burdens, and, probably he'd led her astray a little bit. So I was happy when that one ended.
Oh, we had a bit of a crunch. Here comes Shell.
Lisa is talking about a familiar voice you've heard before in Dear Rachelle.
Go, Shell.
The winning car, Mr. Shane Loates. And Shane, say hi.
It's a bit sunny. It's a tad sunny. It's good. Good bit of track temperature.
Your daughter was nice. It was a nice friendship. He was a very funny guy, and they just gelled. She enjoyed his personality. It was fun. I still got a soft spot for him.
When Christy and I went back to Bargo to see her old house, Christy filled me in on Rachelle and Shane's breakup.
I didn't live here for very long. I think I was only here for a month or two, but it was so much fun. I remember when Rachelle and Shane lived here, we had Shane's little brother's Gemini that they were doing up in the garage, and we made a rally track in the paddock and we poured water on part of it so that we had like a bit that was wet, and we used to race around. And I remember it had no windscreen, and I remember getting in the passenger seat and Rachelle was driving and Shane was timing her, and we came around the corner and she kind of lost it and then regained it, but we were off the track, so we had to go like around a tree. And she didn't slow down though, she just kept going.
So how did you come about to live with Rachelle?
So Rachelle and Shane broke up, and, to help her pay the rent, I moved out of Mum and Dad's and moved in with her. Not that I paid for much of the rent, though, because I was at uni at the time. So
what was their breakup like? How would you describe it?
Oh, yeah, I don't think it was a great breakup. They used to fight a lot, but they were both hot-headed. They probably weren't a good mix.
Oh, look at them. Slow up. I can't even see.
That's Shane with Rachelle at Wakefield Park Raceway as they're getting ready for their big race. They spot Shell's all-time favourite car near the track.
I'll just go park over there, next to the walkie. It's the fastest walking shore in Australia.
Anne, Graham and Christy have always loved Shane like family. Rachelle had broken his heart, but nothing could prepare him for losing her forever. And strangely, it was Sash from the Rebels who broke the news to him. Shane spray-painted cars and he'd previously sold a car to Sash, so they knew each other, but they weren't close. Graham Childs has spoken to Sash while he was looking for Rachelle, and after the tragic news came through, Graham asked him to break it to Shane.
I got a phone call from that Sash, the Rebels guy or whatever it is. Weirdest thing was he was the one that actually told me. And he said, just warn you, they will probably think you're a suspect. That's when that idea was in my head from him. I was like, what are you even talking about? And then, I got a phone call from Mum and everything, and they all come racing down. And, I don't recall much after that. Probably punched a few holes in walls and tried to run off into my car, but everyone was hiding the keys and, trying to calm me down. People were saying to me, oh, you're going to be a suspect. And I'm like, what do you mean? I still love her. I loved her like crazy, I said, how am I? And they're like, oh, you're the ex-boyfriend. You're the jealous ex-boyfriend. I'm like, oh, wow, really?
Even though Shane and Rachelle had a messy breakup, he still loved her, and he blamed himself for not being able to protect her.
Well, she wanted me to go. We were like, we're splitting up. She said, you need to go and start your life. And, I knew she was a strong girl, but, I don't know. I just feel like I shouldn't have left.
But you had no idea she was in any danger.
I know. No, exactly. I had no idea of that. But, you look back now and you're like, oh, what if only if only done things differently or something, I don't know. Nothing could change it, obviously, now, but, yeah, it still hurts. I still think about it a lot.
And how long did it take for you to pull yourself together after this happened? And
I was a mess for quite a few years. So I was, like, in a house where I'd moved with some friends at Ingleburn there, and, we were partying and smoking pot and playing games and stuff like that, and just, it was pretty miserable. Tried to, just build cars and take my mind off it through building cars and that, but it's a pretty tough time. And then I met my wife, who I'm with now, through that house, and got out of that house and moved on with life.
is she the best thing that happened to you since losing Rachelle?
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, I could still, like, imagine now, like, Rachelle would still come over. Do you know what I mean? Like, she was that kind of girl, and even my new wife, like, she'd love a drink with Rachelle. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, we left as really good friends. Our biggest problem was, I think we were better friends and not lovers. You know what I mean? Like, we had a lot of the same taste in cars and everything, and I think we were just better off friends. I should have just stayed and just, I don't know. I still blame myself sometimes, but it's tough.
Oh, Shane.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Still think about it a lot. Sorry.
Don't apologise.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's just so hard to fathom. And you wrote a letter to Shane. What prompted that?
Just to keep in touch and to say, you're always in our thoughts, and, and sorry things didn't pan out.
I just wanted the best, for their daughter and stuff, so they could see that in me. And, I consider myself to be a kind person and will do anything for anyone. Take the shirt off my back if they need it.
Rachelle was newly single and excited about her future. This is 2001. There's no Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, but there were online chat rooms. Can you tell me about Nathan, the guy that she met in Queensland over the internet? Because the internet would have only just been emerging in 2001.
She said I'm going to Queensland for Easter, and I'm like, oh, come, I'm not doing anything. So she got a statesman off the lot, and Lisa and her and I went to Queensland. We went to the Gold Coast and met this Nathan.
This complete stranger who we've never even seen. That's Shell. She's like, yeah, got a good feeling about this. Let's go. I think this guy sounds pretty cool.
And what was that road trip like with Rachelle? Was she a bit of a character?
Oh, God, yeah. At Grafton at the mobile service station, and just little dares, like she'd do cartwheels. We pulled over into a cane field, actually, and we got the car bogged. There's these three women taking photos of us in the cane field, and the car got stuck, and we were just laughing our heads off trying to get this car unstuck. And, yeah, it's good times. Good times.
Idiots, all of us, really. All a little bit too trusting. I do look back at that, then knowing what happened to Rachelle and just think, what the actual F were we thinking? Driving all that way to see some guy who we did not know, who could have been, like, thank God he wasn't, to my knowledge. We stayed in his house and they, had a fun weekend together, and then we drove back.
Would she have gone alone? Was she a risk taker?
No, that's why she said, I'm going to Queensland. Do you want to come? He seemed like a nice guy, and he actually came to Nelson Bay later that next month or something to come and see her.
It's important to tell you about the girls' trip to Queensland, not just for the memories, but because that road trip didn't go down well with Rachelle's boss at Camden Holden, Kevin Carell.
he was sort of teaching her the ropes. So she looked at him, in my opinion, like a mentor, a kind of father figure. She adored him. She looked up to him. I could see it at the way that she interacted with him. She was very trusting and she genuinely enjoyed people's company. She took the time to really get to know people. She loved mucking around with people and having a joke, and she built friends really, really quickly. She established really good relationships really early with people.
Kevin, a father of two, was 22 years older than Rachelle, and he'd often lend her cars from the lot, not a perk everyone was afforded.
My understanding, and I don't think I read between the lines, I think she probably articulated this, but he had a crush on her. She navigated that relationship to her advantage, I think.
From what you saw, could Kevin have played favourites with anyone? Did you get a sense of that?
Yeah, and I think he was doing that with Rachelle. Like at the time, it's sort of, sometimes it was like that mentoring, but I don't know, more, and I'd like to say father-daughter, but not father-daughter. I don't know, more like he liked her. He liked her, is my perception.
I don't think it was a romantic relationship at all. I don't think she was remotely interested in him at all. But I think he had a crush on her, but he was also her boss, so I believe there's probably some power play that he had over her there. But she was a little aware of that and was just managing that so that she could still probably work, earn the good money and borrow cars that she liked.
Do you think Rachelle realised that Kevin may have fancied her?
I think so. I do recall a conversation that I can't remember. I remember standing at the door of the showroom and Rachelle shushing me because I was talking about Nathan coming down and boys being at Nelson Bay. And she shushed me when she was on the phone to him. So it was like she didn't want him to know that.
I saw him as a creepy old guy in my head. I don't think it's normal to be afraid of telling someone about your personal life if they're your boss.
I think that he may have said some stuff to her that, you know, I hope you're not meeting up with any fellas or, you know, I don't know. It just didn't sit right with me. That's your boss. He shouldn't care about what you were doing on the weekend or who you were meeting or what you were doing. That's your boss.
And what do you read into that?
Well, that's more than a boss should.
So she didn't tell Kevin that she was going to meet a guy that she'd met online?
Definitely not. No, that was definitely a thing we had to keep secret.
And what did she tell you specifically about why she wanted that kept secret from Kevin?
There was definitely like a little bit of fear, but fear in the sense, my interpretation of that fear, I should say, was that it was just more, he's her boss. She navigated that relationship to her advantage, I think, you know, in terms of him lending her cars, for example, when we went to see Nathan.
I mean, she just was a bubbly person that people just were drawn to. And it was a guy from Bow Repairs that had a little bit of a thing for her.
I think he had a crush on her too, and I think there was a little bit of playful texting back and forth between them. Yeah, I don't know that was going anywhere, but it was, I think, light, maybe.
Lee worked at the local Bow Repairs tyre shop. That's how he met Rachelle. The night before she was murdered, they'd had a secret rendezvous. Let's hear part of his statement to police. These are his words, but not his voice.
On Wednesday, 6th of June 2001, I had spoken to Rachelle at work during the day. We arranged to meet later that night after she'd gone to her sister's boyfriend's place for a birthday party. This was at Raby. During the night, I sent her messages and spoke to her on my mobile. The conversation was about when we were going to meet. I met up with Rachelle at about 9 o'clock at a picnic spot at Eldersley, just over the northern side of the bridge. I got into her car, we talked for a while and did some kissing. This lasted for about an hour. I then told her I had to go as I was getting tired. She then tried to start her car, but because the radio had been turned on, the battery was flat. I then drove her in my car to Camden Holden, where she got the booster pack. I then drove her back to her car and we got it started. She then drove off towards Bargo. I then went home. Rachelle spoke to me on the weekend about getting a VL Walkinshaw, which was her favourite car. She told me that Camden Holden had just bought one and she was getting it as a loan car. Rachelle asked me if I would like to go with her for a drive in it on the weekend. She said she wanted to go for a drive at night as she had the weekend off. She told me she was meant to pick the car up Friday afternoon. She told me Kevin was going to loan her the car.
I'm guessing as you're listening to this, you probably fall into one of two camps right about now. You're either going, what the hell is a Walkinshaw, like I was? Or you're thinking, sick, I can picture it right now. I'd love to take one of those for a spin.
The Holden Commodore VLSS Group A, Walkinshaw, or otherwise known as a Walkie. One of the most iconic Australian cars of all time. Once dubbed the Plastic Pig, a classic panorama silver blue muscle machine. With its classic spoiler and ground-hugging aero kit, it looks like a brick stuck on the road. Under the hood boasts a powerful fuel-injected V8 engine running its idolised twin-throttle body intake, or twin throts in Commodore vernacular. The Walkie was a product of a bogan boom that swept across Australia in the late 1980s. Only 750 Walkies were built, making them extremely rare, and today they're worth a fortune. A valuable collectible that can fetch up to $500,000.
That's Ben Hill, a motor mechanic who's an old friend of the child's family. Remember he took a look at Rachelle's old Holden. While we're on the subject of cars, Damian Loone is also interested in the Walkinshaw. For him, it's less about the thrill of revving a sick ice blue muscle machine and more about whether it's the key to solving Rachelle's murder.
There's some suggestion of a Walkinshaw. She was going to have a Walkinshaw for the weekend. And Kevin Carell from the yard, her boss, may have promised her a Walkinshaw for the weekend. That would have sent her wild because she's a car enthusiast, particularly Commodores or Holdens.
How critical do you think the Walkinshaw is in this puzzle?
Well, if it's used as a ploy to lure you somewhere, then it is very significant. But have we ever found one?
We know as the used car sales manager at Camden Holden, Rachelle's boss Kevin Carell wielded a fair bit of power over her. There was also some trouble brewing in the books in the background. And within days of the funeral, which she attended, Kevin was fired. Here's the car yard's general manager, Jim Morrison. What action did you take against any employees about this fraud scandal that you uncovered?
All we did was take it to the detectives. The business owner sort of played it fairly close to his chest. We didn't make it well known amongst the rest of the staff. We thought that may jeopardise things, so it was better to keep it low key.
Take me back to that moment when you decided, along with the business owner, that somebody had to go.
That was not long after Rachelle's death, 1 to 2 weeks. I know there was certainly that managers' meeting, which was a few days after. I know the business owner, he had some concerns with the manager at the time, some other discrepancies and things. That's just things that I'm not privy to. But he just had enough concerns that he made the decision to terminate the person.
Were you involved in that meeting of sacking Kevin?
Yes, I was present. Yeah.
How did it go down, and what was the reasoning you gave to Kevin as to why he was being sacked?
The business owner basically controlled the meeting. I was literally there as an observer. Kevin certainly wasn't happy. I do recall that, but I can't remember what was actually said at the time.
Kevin Carell has always denied defrauding Camden Holden. No charges have ever been laid in relation to those allegations. Kevin has also always denied any involvement in Rachelle's murder and has never been charged. We'll hear more on Kevin later. But Damian Loone, what are your thoughts on the other men in Rachelle's life that were looked at closely by police very early in the investigation?
When you're investigating these homicides, you always look at the person who they're close to. And certainly the ex-boyfriend, Shane, he would certainly be one of my intended targets to, first of all, find about his alibi, etc., and anything else. But there's nothing to connect him to Rachelle's homicide. So I believe now that he's out of the frame.
What about Lee, the young guy from Bow Repairs that she saw the night before she was murdered?
Well, Lee's an interesting case in this matter because we believe that Rachelle saw him the previous night before a homicide. Now, again, someone who has contact with Rachelle needs to be looked at closely. But his movements on the Thursday night could be accounted for. So he has provided an alibi that's fairly well rock solid, and he was cleared very quickly.
And what about Nathan and internet romance? Now, he lived in Queensland and they'd met up a couple of times, but there's no evidence to link him to the crime. So what are your thoughts on this internet relationship?
Well, Nathan and Rachelle hooked up together via the internet, but he came from another state and it was Queensland, a long way away from where Rachelle lived. And there's no evidence that ever linked him to this crime. And he was quite candid and frank in his admission that he'd met with Rachelle, but there's nothing to say that anything untoward happened.
The night before Rachelle was murdered, Lee told police that Rachelle had told him that she was being loaned a Walkinshaw from her boss, Kevin. What do you glean from that evidence?
Well, we know Rachelle loved her motor vehicles, and she was really excited to be loaned this Walkinshaw Commodore, which in its era was the most fantastic Commodore made by the Holden Group. And you have to wonder why the motives for Kevin for doing that. And she was very excited to be having this car for the weekend. And you have to think why Kevin would be doing this and what's the underlying reasons for it.
What about the remaining POIs? We've covered off Sash, we've covered off Shane, the ex-boyfriend, and a few other men that we know of. And then there are 2 other men who knew Rachelle. What do you read into their evidence and why they were looked at and ultimately ruled out?
There were 2 men, and because of their contact with Rachelle via a mobile phone on the Thursday afternoon, well, it immediately would have become persons of interest in this case. Their alibis were checked thoroughly, and they were just friends of Rachelle. They were eliminated from the investigation as any further offender or offenders in the possible suspects of Rachelle's homicide. I've read the statements. I've also read the review by the officer in charge of Rachelle's homicide, and I'm quite satisfied that they have had nothing to do with Rachelle's homicide at all.
Rachelle's neighbour Bruce was also a person of interest. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, he's another one of certainly of interest where he's got some sort of romantic connections with Rachelle, and there's no secret there that he fancied her.
I've always been quite suspicious of Bruce because I just found him, I don't know, he just always gave me a bad vibe. I just didn't like him. And he always just sort of would turn up out of nowhere.
And I think Rachelle even said that she didn't mind him, but she had problems with the fact that he was married with a couple of kids. He's also the neighbour.
I think he gave her attention and she liked that, but I don't think she was remotely interested in him. That would be my take on that. I remember him coming over once when we were having a girls' night, and I remember just thinking, fuck off, dude. Like, I don't know who you are or why you're here, but clearly this is a girls' night. I'm giving you the signals that I don't want you here. But he ended up staying, and I think, I don't know, 23, earning my own money, and I remember paying, for the food to be. I'm like, don't eat my fucking food, Who are you? So I remember being irritated with him, and I remember just thinking, why are you hanging around? Like, nobody wants you here, but he just ate food. I think he even had a whole drink with us and then eventually left. But I just remember being irritated by him. I had an ick factor with him.
He admits that he had a thing for her, but nothing sexual, just a hug and a kiss here and there. And I think he was hoping for more, but I think she told him straight away that nothing else was going to happen.
Also sent her flowers a couple of times, which is ill because he has a wife, or had a wife. Yeah, so there was a bit of discomfort for me with him. I didn't like, I won't say maybe forcefulness, but I just didn't like that a guy thought it was okay to come into her house, stay somewhat unwelcomed, given that the other guests clearly didn't want him there, and dine with us and, not contribute anything. And, yeah. There was no part of her that was, I think, into him or ever thinking about pursuing him. I think she just liked the idea of someone giving her attention, and we've all been in that chapter. But I didn't like him, didn't warm to him, didn't want him there.
And how did Rachelle react when he sent her flowers to her work?
I can only imagine, actually, how she would have reacted and how swiftly she would have made up a story about who they came from.
The thing I'm really pissed off about is that they pulled the task force so early. And when Ivor asked to go to Queensland, because that's where Bruce and his wife kind of ran off to really quickly, they said no because of budgeting issues like that. My dad has said to them before when they've said that, we've already spent $100,000 on your daughter's case. He said, do you want me to write you a cheque? We would have paid for them to go to Queensland. We would have taken them to Queensland. It's just ridiculous that it was a budgeting issue that stopped them from going to Queensland and getting that evidence back then when memories were fresh. And now we've got to do it again now when it's 23 years later.
Years later, Bruce would be cleared as a person of interest during a coronial inquest. Here's what Ivor Davies remembers about questioning Bruce and his dad at the station in 2001.
We pulled them both in. It was a time, unfortunately, we were really, really pressed then, and it all sort of happened on us really quick. So when they went out back to the car, it was about 8 o'clock in the evening, and I'm in the police station car park, and I'm just watching them in the truck, and the interior light was on. And at this time, I'm watching them because I'm thinking, these guys are up in their neck. I couldn't hear it, of course, but I can see the intense conversation. It was almost like they were barking at each other.
On the next episode of Dear Rachelle.
I remember saying to Ivor Davies, at that time that she's told me something. I'm sure she's told me something and I'm sure I'm forgetting it. And I went under hypnosis and I just started being Rachelle.
So I called him and said, she's missing. That was so weird. He's not concerned at all.
Did it surprise you when the Rebels bikies turned up?
It did, but it also reaffirmed my thought that this is a red herring placed by someone.
There's no doubt about it. He's a red hot suspect.
The sense of fear he created. As a woman, you wouldn't leave the house.
Dear Rachelle is a multimedia production from True Crime Australia. If you want to be the first to find out what happens next, go to dearrachelle.com.au. That's where News Corp Australia subscribers get early access to podcast episodes and breaking news in our live investigation before anybody else. And you'll also find exclusive videos, interactive evidence, feature articles and more. That's dearrachelle.com.au. DEARRACHELLE.com.au. If you have any tips or confidential information to share with me, Ashlea Hansen, please send an email to dearrachelle@news.com.au. Our supervising producer and audio editor is Reese Gunter. Rachel Fountain is executive producer and audio director. Our executive editor is Sarah Blake. Our senior journalist is Patrick Carline. Video editors are Gillian McNally, Owen Yang and Stephen Woods. Picture editors are Jeff Darmanin and Christy Miller. Senior camera operators are Daniel Andrews and Oscar Vieira. With sound design by Martin Peralta. Thanks also to Greg Thompson, Eleni Pineris, Shoba Rayo, Faye Gould, Vanessa Graham, Hayley Goddard, Stephen Grice, Charlotte Karp, Tina Coggins and Harry Hughes. Special thanks to the Daily Telegraph editor, Ben English. And Dear Rachelle would not be possible without the help and unwavering support of Christy and Anne Childs, Mindy Wicks, Damian Loone and Rachelle's friends. This podcast series is hosted and investigated by me, Ashlea Hansen.